Hey everyone, this is the Hot Revenge community. Ready to listen to a new hot story? Then get comfortable and we're starting. My parents spent the entire family dinner raving about my brother's new house. It was a huge 4-bedroom place. They mentioned the heated pool and the expensive Italian drapes. Mom practically glowed, acting as if she had personally overseen the construction. Forks clinked and laughter filled the dining room. I instantly felt like I was 12 again, completely unnoticed and out of focus. Then Mom looked right at me, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Vanessa, wouldn't you love to stay there sometime?" Everyone chuckled except for me. I calmly put my fork down, steady and controlled. I gave a small smile, just enough to make them feel uneasy. They still had no idea who truly controlled the property they were celebrating. When I was little, I believed that staying silent was the best way to keep the peace. In my family, peace meant letting my mother dominate every room and never daring to interrupt her. My mother was convinced her son, Miles, was perfect. If he created a mess, it was always dismissed as boys will be boys. If I came home with excellent grades, she simply said, "That's what's expected of you." It took me many years to understand. She wasn't spiteful. I simply didn't register in her world at all. Our suburban residence always appeared flawless externally. New paint, perfectly manicured hedges, the kind of place that made neighbors wave. But inside, it was a home designed exclusively for one favorite child. My brother's room was double the size of mine. His walls were covered with trophies from teams that never actually won championships. Mom always clapped the loudest for him, even when he barely played the game. I clearly recall holding my blue ribbon from the science fair, standing in the hall, just hoping she would look up. She never did. She was busy frosting a cake to celebrate my brother's effort after he failed his math test. Dad kept quiet. I believe he cared for both of us, but he valued tranquility more than anything. His way of showing affection was driving me to school when Mom forgot, or secretly giving me candy when she scolded me for being too sensitive. I always hoped he would intervene, just once, to balance the dynamic. But silence was his defense mechanism. Only one person truly acknowledged me, my aunt, Dad's sister. Aunt Judith held a quiet kind of influence. She was single, very successful, and never sought approval from anyone. On my 12th birthday, she handed me a small leather-bound journal. "Write down every single goal you have," she advised. "One day, you'll show them your results instead of having to tell them." That journal quickly became the blueprint for my escape. By the time I reached high school, I had stopped trying to earn my mother's recognition and focused entirely on achieving results. I majored in business, earned scholarships, and managed 2 jobs. Meanwhile, my brother coasted through endless college parties and internships funded by the family. Mom called him ambitious. She labeled me stubborn. After college graduation, I used all my savings to purchase a tiny duplex in a less desirable part of St. Louis, Missouri. I taught myself how to repair leaky plumbing and strip old paint. I didn't tell anyone about it. Every new property I acquired after that became another hidden asset, another piece of the private empire I was constructing without their knowledge. By the age of 34, I possessed 6 properties across the St. Louis area. 3 of those were located right in the exclusive neighborhood where my brother's mansion sat. Mom assumed I lived in a modest apartment downtown and drove a used car because I wasn't concerned with appearances. She wasn't wrong about my priorities. I just cared about having control far more than looking wealthy. Still, a small part of me wished that someday she might ask about my life, not to compare or boast, but simply to know me. That question never arrived. Instead, I received dinner invitations framed by a sense of obligation. Every visit meant listening to how well my brother was doing, and how beautifully his wife, Tiffany, kept their house. Now, sitting at the table, I felt the accumulated pressure of every word they had ignored over the years. Tonight, however, my silence was about to carry a completely different meaning. The dinner started off smoothly enough, at least superficially. Mom floated around the dining room, behaving as if she were hosting a state dinner. She needlessly adjusted napkins and bragged about her perfected recipes. Dad poured wine without speaking. My brother was obviously the center of attention. His wife, Tiffany, laughed too loudly at all his jokes, meticulously brushing non-existent fluff from his expensive jacket. Miles just finished his backyard redesign, Mom announced proudly, carving the roast as if cutting a ribbon. They added a beautiful pergola, a fire pit, and a koi pond. Isn't that impressive? I offered the practiced, polite smile I'd worn for years. Sounds nice, I responded. Mom's eyes flicked to mine. You would truly enjoy it, Vanessa. It is so different from that, what is it you call it? Cozy apartment of yours. There it was, the dig disguised as kindness. I took a slow drink of wine instead of replying. Tiffany leaned forward, head slightly tilted. You should definitely drop by sometime. We have so much space now. You could finally see what a genuine home feels like. The table laughed softly. Dad coughed quietly, a sound of discomfort. My Aunt Judith paused her fork in midair, directing a quick glance my way. That single look told me everything. Breathe. I stared down at my plate, slicing small, precise pieces of meat I no longer had the appetite to taste. Every noise in the room became painfully sharp. The cutlery clinking, my brother's smug laughter, Mom's voice dripping with pride. I had lived this painful cycle my whole life. The subtle insults, the way they treated my achievements as invisible and elevated his mediocrity to legendary status. Mom was not finished yet. She picked up her wine glass, swirling the liquid, waiting for the perfect dramatic moment. Oh, speaking of the house, she said, her eyes twinkling. Miles, tell your sister about those marble countertops. They were imported, from Italy. Sure thing, my brother said, flashing his confident grin. It's quite something. Maybe Vanessa can stay there for a little while. You'd love it, sis. Then came the phrase that shattered my composure. Mom turned to me, her voice syrupy. Vanessa, wouldn't you love to stay there sometime? The resulting laughter wasn't mean in tone, but it was certainly cruel in intent. Everyone chuckled, expecting me to offer my usual gentle nod and quietly vanish into the background. But this time I didn't concede. I placed my fork down meticulously. The quiet click against the porcelain was more impactful than any shouted word. Aunt Judith met my gaze again. Her expression was unwavering, conveying silent permission. I leaned back and drew a deep breath. For the first time, I wasn't suppressing the humiliation. I was analyzing it, measuring it, waiting for my opportunity. If they wanted to witness what I had built, I would reveal it exactly on my own terms. Driving back to St. Louis that evening, the streetlights seemed to streak across the glass, unsettling and blurring. The sound of Mom's voice kept repeating in my mind, sweet, sharp, and defining. I muted the music, embracing the quiet inside the car. Silence used to signal my surrender. Now it was a source of power. When I got to my apartment, my jaw felt stiff from keeping all my frustration contained. I grabbed a glass of water but left it on the counter, turning instead to my computer. The screen's illumination was enough light for the room. Property deeds, financial spreadsheets, mortgage papers, my entire world was laid out, a private success story that remained unknown to my family. 6 properties were listed under my ownership. They included rented duplexes, condos, and single-family houses, all generating revenue. 3 of these were situated in the same upscale district where my brother's huge house dominated the landscape. The contrast was almost comical. I reviewed every document. My heart rate was normal. People assume success must be loud, I thought. Sometimes it is best kept quiet. My Aunt Judith called just before 12. Her intuition was always perfect. Are you all right, kid? She asked. I'm past being all right, I answered. I have the evidence now. She gave a quiet laugh. I figured as much. You stayed silent for too long. What do you plan to do? Dinner next Sunday. Mom invited everyone. A short pause followed. Good, she stated finally. Make sure they remember it. After the call, I sat back, looking at the St. Louis skyline outside my window. The downtown lights pulsed steadily, like a slow heartbeat. I reflected on all the late nights I'd spent at construction sites, coordinating contractors and wiping drywall dust off my shoes, while my brother was purchasing his latest expensive vehicle using money from Mom. I recalled every sarcastic comment about how true achievement meant showing off and living extravagantly. I had built everything deliberately and quietly, brick by brick, specifically for moments like this one. I reached for the old leather journal my aunt had given me years ago. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed. My early handwriting had evolved from hesitant to confident. On the first page, I had written, "One day they'll see." I smiled, turning to a clean page. "Tomorrow they will." I dedicated the following day to collecting documentation, title deeds, financial statements, and tax forms, ensuring everything was notarized, sealed, and perfect. I wasn't preparing a display of vanity. I was preparing for the straightforward delivery of fact. When the following Sunday arrived, I looked in the mirror, adjusting the collar of a plain navy dress. I appeared composed, but my eyes were sharp. No anger, I told myself. No crying, just the reality. The drive to my parents' house felt short this time. Familiar houses passed by like scenery in a play I had already outgrown. The closer I got, the lighter I felt, as if every mile removed an old layer of emotional restraint. By the time I parked in their driveway, I was no longer the daughter they overlooked. I was the impending storm they never anticipated. The house looked exactly the same red brick, the same porch light flickering over the steps. But tonight, I perceived it differently. It wasn't merely home anymore. It was a platform, and I was finished playing the minor, silent part. The familiar scent of roast beef and rosemary filled the kitchen. Mom was setting the table with her finest china, humming. My brother was already there with a glass of wine. His wife sat near him in an expensive silk blouse. Dad stood by the counter, pretending to read the newspaper. Aunt Judith was seated at the far end, her expression unreadable. "Vanessa," Mom greeted me, using her usual overly sweet tone. "We were just discussing Miles's open house. It's truly spectacular." "I've seen it," I stated simply, taking my seat. Dinner began as before, boasting, comparisons, and hidden insults. It was the same worn-out discussion I had known my whole life. The difference was me. I was not reacting anymore. My brother leaned back, offering his confident smile. "We're thinking of adding a guest suite soon," he said, looking at Mom. "Maybe you could stay there, Vanessa, see what success is really like." Mom laughed, trying to sound polite. "Oh, Miles, don't tease your sister." To me, she added, "But truly, honey, you would love to stay. It's much more spacious than your little apartment." There it was again, the familiar insult thinly disguised. I smiled slightly. "You think so?" Dad's eyes darted up. He recognized the shift in my tone. Aunt Judith slowly put down her fork, readying herself. Mom, unaware, continued. "Of course. Your place seems so temporary, dear. You should see what Miles has built. 4 bedrooms, a pool, marble countertops, everything. From Italy," his wife added. "We imported it all. You can truly feel the quality." A tense silence followed. I folded my napkin perfectly and put it beside my plate. "You're right," I said softly. "You can feel the difference." Mom smiled, pleased with her point. "Exactly. You see, it's all about. Because I own 2 houses next door to his." I cut in, my voice calm and even, "and one right across the street." The air went dead silent. Mom's smile vanished instantly. My brother blinked, losing his grin. "What?" I leaned forward slightly, meeting his eyes. "You heard me. 2 nearby, 1 opposite. Which property would you prefer to stay in?" The resulting silence was absolute. Dad's fork clattered softly onto his plate. "Vanessa," he began, his voice low and unsure. I turned to him gently. "Dad, I've been buying property for over a decade, completely on my own. While Mom was paying for Miles's 3rd business attempt, I was managing 2 jobs, fixing rentals, and saving. I didn't need the family's help. I just needed space to build." His wife let out a nervous, quick laugh that stopped short. "You must be joking." I pulled a small folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Inside were the notarized property deeds. "No joke." My brother's hand shook, viewing the pages. "This isn't real." Mom's face turned bright red. "Vanessa, how could you do this?" "How could I?" I interrupted, still calm. I worked hard. I kept my success private. You taught me that. Remember, you said, good girls don't brag. For the first time, Mom had no reply. I continued, my voice steady. You spent your life boasting about what Miles owned. Maybe you should have noticed what I was achieving. Aunt Judith's small smile showed pride, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. My brother pushed the folder away. You rent that apartment downtown. I do, I confirmed. Because it's a smart financial decision. My tenants pay my mortgages. I don't require Marble to feel successful. His wife's cheeks burned red. You're trying to embarrass us. I tilted my head. No, I'm simply making things honest. Mom finally snapped, her voice sharp. You are being disrespectful, Vanessa. This is wrong family behavior. I laughed quietly. Family? The one that never saw me, never supported me, and never asked how I was unless it benefited Miles. Respect goes both ways, Mom. Dad cleared his throat, sounding shaky. She is correct. Mom snapped her head toward him. Don't start, George. No, he said, louder now, with a firmness I hadn't witnessed before. You've been blind, Carol. You made our daughter invisible in her own house. Look at her now. She built everything you wanted for Miles without any of our help. The room grew silent again, heavier than before. Mom's eyes teared up, showing humiliation, not remorse. You trapped us. I didn't, I replied softly. I just answered your question. I slowly pushed my chair back, the legs scraped on the floor. Enjoy your dinner. I paused at the doorway. And Miles, I'll keep the porch lights on just in case you ever need to rent one. Behind me, I heard Tiffany gasp, Mom's muffled cry, and Aunt Judith's soft laugh. Dad said nothing, but when I glanced back, his eyes met mine. He looked proud and sad. Outside, the cold air felt like freedom. I paused in the driveway, looking at my brother's house across the street, the house they had idolized. It looked small under the streetlights now. As I drove away, I saw my reflection, steady, resolved. The woman I had wished Mom could see. And maybe, finally, she did. 3 months passed with no contact. By then, the news had circulated. My brother's mansion was listed for sale. A real estate contact confirmed my theory. He used a second mortgage to keep up his image. The house they bragged about became his downfall. Mom stopped calling after that dinner. She texted once, "You humiliated us," and I never answered. Dad reached out weeks later for coffee. He looked tired. I should have defended you sooner, he said. I didn't speak, but I stayed. That was enough for both of us. I focused my energy on a new thing. The Horizon Fund, a scholarship for kids told they weren't good enough. The first 10 recipients stood on stage with me at the launch. Their parents clapped with the pride I once wanted. When the applause ended, I stood under the lights, calm, unburdened. The mansion, the dinners, the silence, it all led here. Revenge is sometimes quiet. It is steady. It is peace. That night, I drove past my brother's old area. The porch lights of my properties glowed, quiet proof that I had already won. I felt no anger, just freedom. Silence, for the first time, was healing. If you had to prove your value to people who ignored you, you are not alone. Tell me your story in the comments and hit subscribe, because every quiet victory should be heard.